Welcome to the Fret Friends Podcast, a guitar and music podcast here to instruct, inform, and showcase. Fret Friends is a podcast from AP Guitar, a music tuition business established in 2012, which provide lessons, workshops, and courses to students all over the world. So here's your host, Adam Picard.
Yes. Hello. I hope you're all doing very, very well and you are enjoying Fret Friends so far. This is Season 1, Episode 3, Soloing Improvisation Tips. Today I'm going to give you all the tips and tricks that you need to help you improvise a guitar solo. This will be essentially for when you are sitting down after work, chilling, you've just had a bath, ready to play your guitar, and you want to be creative. The last part of your practice routine, potentially, if you're going by Episode 2's work and map. You would be playing along with a backing track, most likely, or for the more advanced players, you may have got yourself a loop pedal and you could be playing along with that. You could be using YouTube for these backing tracks. They're quick and easy to access. This is what I do. Make sure you can hear the backing track and your guitar equally, or the loop and your guitar equally before you get started. So in preparation, you should really warm up. You can use spider exercises, you can use scales. Think about which scales you're going to be using. So for example, if your backing track is in C minor, you might want to practice the minor pentatonic, the blues scale, the natural minor, potentially even the harmonic minor within the key of C. Keep it simple if you like. Start with the root note on the low E string and just go through position 1. Make sure you're in tune. You don't want to get to a point where you are sat down, you're ready, you're comfortable, and you start playing, and the only thing you're in tune with is yourself. It's all good and well tuning relatively to yourself, but when you get to playing along with a track that is tuned to 440, as most music is, then you're going to get a little bit stuck, and then you'll have to start all over again, and potentially ruin your mood slightly. At this stage, we're going to practice using the same scales over the entire chord progression. Rather than focus on the chord tones specifically and changing scale per chord. People do this, of course they do, mainly in jazz music, but especially if you're a beginner or an intermediate player, this could sound fairly forced and calculated most of the time. We don't really want to be doing that at this stage. You want to be free. The less things you have to think about, the better. Saying that, it is important to listen to the chord changes, as focusing on which note you land the licks on over which chord can make your soloing sound way more interesting. Right, let's get into it. Here's the scene. Let's set the scene. You know that I like to set the scene by now. You've lined yourself up with which scales to use. You have your backing track. What's next? Your goal is simply to play a solo that sounds melodic, slick, and in time. You would rather play a solo with the wrong notes in time than play a solo, you know what I'm going to say already, then play a solo with the right notes out of time. Trust me on this, it's true. In my opinion, this is extremely accurate. If you are just starting out, focus on playing some short phrases. Focus on the 3 or 4 licks that you know with pauses in between to provide space. This is about expressing the idea within each phrase. You don't have to play very fast licks all of the time to sound impressive. That can turn a listener off. An effective solo map that I teach my students could look like this. Start off slow. You can use held notes for this. It's an introduction, essentially. Start with less notes. Take your time and pace yourself. Remember, timing is key. Then build by leaving less space in between the licks. Build when the time feels right, because this all depends on the actual backing track that you're using as well. And the more you use the same backing track, the more you get to know the band, really, because you are playing along with a band in that sense. And when the time feels right, as I say, develop. Give space, add rest points. This is extremely important. I do talk a lot, okay, and I'm guilty of this myself. But if I was to talk at you over and over and over and over and over and over without leaving any space, it sounds boring. It sounds dull. This is the same with soloing. We need pauses. Next up, if you have a lick that you really like, repeat it. This is done a lot in blues music. You could change it at the end. So you could repeat the same lick, but change the end bit each time. You could experiment with different rhythms as well. Towards the end of the solo, potentially 2/3 of the way through, you could use some higher sounding bends to create more tension and overall epicness. And high up the neck. Listen, this is an overall standard solo map that I teach. This is, of course, not for every single solo that has existed, because that's unrealistic. I have some extra tips for you, again, that I find my students really enjoy. Continue to build your lick repertoire. If you have 4 that you use all the time, that's great. They are yours. Add to them, either by learning specific licks, which are available everywhere, right? YouTube, me, you name it. And or learning solos that exist already and borrowing licks from them. Remember, they're not going to sound the same if they're in different keys. You can change them up slightly, make them your own, but you can borrow licks from existing solos. You may learn the whole of Hotel California solo, for example, and you may take one lick from it, and that's great, because then that is yours. We all find that we use the same sort of licks over and over. We add ones in every now and then. The longer you've been playing, the less often you add one in, but when you do, it's brilliant. You know, I've got another one, another trick, another tool in my toolbox. Start the licks on different beats of the bar. Don't always start on beat number 1. This is an exercise that I currently do with some students. The idea is that you play the exact same lick, but you start on different beats of the bar, and you feel and you hear the difference, and the difference is huge. Start the lick on beat 1, then start it on beat 2, 3, and 4, if your song is in 4/4. You can also then experiment with starting on the ands, so you'll break it into 1/8 notes. You could start on 1 and 2, and hear and feel the difference. This is a way of having more in your lick repertoire without actually learning another lick. There's other things, of course, that we can do. We can use passing notes, which is a simple hack if you want to make fairly basic licks sound much bigger. You can use grace slides to begin licks. I do this all the time. If you have a lick that's 4 notes, slide into the first note from 1 fret below or 1 fret above. You could also do it to notes within licks as well. You could slide from 1 fret above into that note. A grace slide is essentially a slide where you don't hear the note that it's coming from. You hear that it's a slide, but you don't hear that it is fret 6 sliding to fret 7. Work on call and response. End on a note other than the root note. And then play a second lick and end on the root note to feel like you've landed at home, basically. So this is tension and release. This is done in soloing a lot. In fact, this is done in songwriting as well. It's all about tension and release, going somewhere else and then coming back home. It's like a story. It's all the same. Lastly, record or film yourself. On your last run through, probably, if you know when that's going to be. If you're like me, it goes on and on and on and on. But make sure you film one of them. Not every time you practice. You don't want this to be a chore. You watch it back. How did it sound? Does it sound relaxed? Does it sound like it needs more licks? Does it sound empty? Does it sound like I'm lost and lacking direction? Would you play it to a friend or family member? What could be improved on? And also, it's just keeping it as a record. Okay, so on this day, December 2022, this is how I sounded. Now, 2 years later, it's brilliant. There's no excuse not to do it now. Even if you don't like the way you look, you can just audio record it. Keep a record. All right, good luck, guys. This has been Season 1, Episode 3. Of course, as always, plenty more to come. Please remember to rate and review this podcast if you've enjoyed it. I believe from what I hear on other podcasts that it really helps to spread the word. So I would massively appreciate that if you didn't mind. You can find me on social media. Instagram and TikTok are at AP Guitar Guru. YouTube is at AP Guitar TV. You can visit my website, I don't feel we need to say www. In 2025. Okay, I'm going to go with it. apguitar.co.uk. where you can find more information about my lessons, workshops and courses. And please feel free to send us a text through the information in the show notes, or email me, contact@apguitar.co.uk. Thank you so much, everybody. I will see you at the next one, and good luck.